My brothers and sisters in Christ, in the account of the book of Exodus, there's the famous story while Moses is up on the mountain with God, that the people grow panicked and ask Aaron to make for them a god. They don't know what's happened to Moses and the God who led them out of Egypt, so they ask him to forge a god, and that's what leads to the golden calf that they worship before God's anger flares up. And then it's a sense that they need to cling to something. We don't know what's happened to this God, we're unsure, we're nervous, so give us something more graspable that we can cling to. This, we put our salvation in this golden calf. And so, while this episode may seem remote to us, nonetheless, this form of idolatry persists to the present day in many forms. Some are greater, some are more subtle, but this can be perpetuated in the sense of when we transfer our devotion to human beings that belongs to God alone. And so in the first reading today, we hear the account of Barnabas and Paul and their ministry, and Paul in his eloquent speech, the people being converted, but they suddenly look upon Paul and Barnabas as gods themselves and want to make sacrifice. And Paul and Barnabas are horrified, saying, "We're human beings just like you are." But it speaks to our propensity not only to go over the top, not that there's anything wrong with revering someone, loving someone, but when we set them up on a pedestal as a godlike figure, that's where we can get into trouble. Not just because we've misplaced what belongs to God alone, but because we've opened ourselves up to the scandal of when human beings inevitably fall. Human beings are fallible. And so we see this constantly when people feel betrayed, when their idols, the people they look up to, something happens, and then the foundation is rocked underneath them. We see this, in fact, all too often people scandalized, and many will quote that their reason for stepping away from their Christian faith was because of the hypocrisy of another Christian. One sense, that gives us pause of the importance of our witness in each of us, but it also gives rise to a rebuttal. Was your faith in God or in a human being? If we belong to the people of God, in charity and love, we belong to one another, but we should never lose sight of the fact that we are human beings and we are all fallible. And so, if our faith is in human beings alone, then we are destined to be betrayed and sorely disappointed. But if our trust is in God, then tumultuous things will not throw us off this path. We've seen this come up in the most extreme examples in recent years with clergy sexual abuse, scandals. And there's no understating how horrible these things are. They're horrible. People who have betrayed every trust put in them, people that were entrusted to act as Christ to them, who instead violated that trust. That can't be said strongly enough. And yet, the falling of a priest or a bishop should not affect our trust in God. We can still feel betrayed, that's natural. But was our faith in a priest or a bishop, or was our faith in the one that the priest or the bishop was representing? If our trust is in God, then the falling of a human being will not shake it. But if our trust goes into the human beings themselves, then we are set up for a mighty fall. And so, yes, proper devotion, in the case, for example, of the church hierarchy, the places where we're due obedience. We know in certain things there's an exercise of infallibility, but that's not across the board. All human beings, including popes, are fallible in general. There are certain times where in the exercise in conjunction of the church they are not, but as human beings, we are all fallible. And so we're called to give prompt devotion, proper respect, and obedience, but our faith is always in God. And so yes, amongst us, and not just of leaders, amongst us in the pews, our fellow Christians will fall. Sometimes they will hurt us, they will betray us, as we have done to others through our own failings. And yet, all can be healed, all can be forgiven by God and God alone. He is the one that is due all of our trust. And so may we examine Are relationships our priorities in life? And C, am I showing people proper love, or have I grown to improperly idolize anyone? And if so, let's make sure that I'm showing love to my brothers and sisters where it is due, but my worship to God alone. May God bless you all.